You know the feeling. That quiet sting that comes when something slips out of your hands. A plan collapses. A door shuts without warning. Someone leaves. Something breaks. And for a moment you stand there, suspended between confusion and disbelief, wondering why life seems to insist on turning the wrong way just when you thought you had finally found your path. It feels personal. It feels unfair. It feels like the universe is leaning against you instead of holding you. You tell yourself that it should not be this hard, yet the weight on your chest keeps pressing. You wonder if you misread the signs. You wonder if you chose wrong. You wonder if this is just bad luck following you like a shadow. And still, somewhere deep inside, a faint whisper rises. It is so subtle that you barely notice it, so quiet that your fear almost drowns it out. Yet it lingers. It breathes beneath the noise of your thoughts. It hints that something else is happening behind the scenes, something you cannot fully see from the place where you now stand. There is a movement within you that does not feel like failure, even though your mind keeps insisting it is. There is a shift that does not belong to chaos, even though the surface appears broken. You sense it in the space behind your ribs, that small inner chamber where truth usually arrives before understanding. You do not have the words for it yet, but you know it is there. You have felt this before, maybe years ago, maybe in the quiet hours of a night when sleep would not come, maybe in the aftermath of a moment that forced you to confront your own longing. Every time you look back, you realize that what once felt like the end of your world was the beginning of something you could not have imagined then. You remember the job that fell apart only to reveal a different road. You remember the relationship that shattered and exposed the parts of you that were starving for honesty. You remember the move you resisted, the friendship that dissolved, the silence that arrived at the worst possible moment. All those fragments that seemed senseless carried a hidden direction. Not punishment, not carelessness, a quiet correction from the depths of your own soul. And yet, when life tilts again, when the path bends without warning, you forget. You fall back into the old belief that misfortune is a sign of abandonment. You fear that something is wrong with you. You fear that you are being left behind. You fear that you are losing what little control you thought you had. You try to hold the pieces together, even when they no longer belong to the story you are meant to live. You cling to the known because the unknown still feels like winter. But the truth does not disappear just because you cannot see it. Something within you knows when a cycle has completed. Something within you knows when your energy no longer fits the place you are standing. And when you refuse to move, life moves for you. Not out of cruelty, not out of fate, but out of alignment. What you call bad luck is often the precise moment your soul decides to redirect you. It removes what cannot grow with you. It shifts what no longer supports your becoming. It closes the doors that keep you small. It does not ask for your permission. It does not wait for your readiness. It listens only to your truth. You may not see it now. You may still be standing in the aftermath of something you did not expect. You may still feel the ache of what was taken away. Yet beneath the confusion, beneath the resistance, beneath the fear, there is a quiet invitation rising. A turning, a movement towards something that has been waiting for you for far longer than you realize. And in the stillness that follows your disappointment, if you listen closely, you can almost hear your soul calling you forward. And this is only the beginning. There is a moment when you begin to notice the pattern. It does not appear suddenly. It unfolds like mist lifting from a quiet lake at dawn. At first you only sense that something familiar lies beneath the surface of your experiences. A repetition hidden inside the things that fall apart, inside the moments that refuse to go your way, inside the strange precision with which life rearranges what you believed you had secured. You start to understand that what you call chance is rarely accidental. There is a rhythm beneath your missteps. There is intention behind your interruptions. There is movement behind every collapse. You begin to feel the subtle pull of something guiding you, not from above, but from within. It does not speak in words. It speaks in symbols. It speaks in the shape of events, in the timing of encounters, in the closing and opening of invisible doors. You notice that the moments that feel like barriers often appear exactly when you are drifting away from yourself. You notice that the disappointments that hurt the most are the ones that expose the places where you have been pretending. You notice that the losses you interpret as rejection often lead you back toward parts of yourself that you abandoned long ago. This inner force has been with you since the beginning. It is older than your fears. It is wiser than your plans. It is the part of you that remains untouched by your mistakes, a presence that keeps whispering toward your becoming. People call it instinct. They call it intuition. They call it destiny. Jung called it the self, the center of your entire psychological life, the quiet axis around which your story turns. You feel its influence in the tug you cannot explain, in the dreams that linger, in the impulses that never fully disappear, in the strange alignment of moments that do not make sense until years later. And this force does not operate gently when you resist. It does not negotiate with what keeps you small. It allows you to build illusions only long enough for you to see through them. When the structure becomes too tight, it cracks. When the relationship stops supporting your growth, it dissolves. When the identity you are clinging to becomes too narrow for your soul, it fractures. What you interpret as misfortune is often the self correcting your trajectory. It is the soul turning you away from what drains you. It is the psyche withdrawing energy from the paths that no longer match your truth. You have experienced this before without recognizing it. The sudden impulse to leave a place that still seemed fine. The quiet discomfort that grew around someone you thought would stay. The unexpected opportunity that arrived only after you lost what you believed you needed. The season of stillness that felt like stagnation, but was actually preparation. These moments shape you far more than the ones that go according to plan. You grow not because everything works, but because something inside you insists on revealing what is real. You may try to rely on logic to explain these shifts. You may try to create narratives that satisfy your rational mind. But life rarely moves in straight lines. Your inner world is shaped like a forest, full of unseen roots and quiet openings. Some paths lead you back to yourself. Others lead you further into your own forgetting. Each time you drift too far, something calls you back. And when you do not listen, the call becomes an interruption, a coincidence, a crisis, a moment that forces you to stop, to look, to reconsider. These are not punishments. They are signals. Imagine your life as a river. You believe you are steering the boat, and in some ways you are. You choose how you hold the oars. You choose how you respond to the current. But the river has its own direction, carved long before you arrived. When you try to move upstream, the water becomes rough. When you cling to the shore, the current pulls harder. When you insist on forcing the path, you exhaust yourself. It is only when you align with the deeper flow that things begin to move with a strange effortlessness. That flow is the soul. That resistance you feel when you try to ignore it is what you call bad luck. There is an intelligence within your experiences that you cannot access with your eyes. You feel it instead. Every discomfort reveals something. Every detour hides an insight. Every disappointment clears space for what you have been unwilling to imagine. And if you stay long enough with the ache, if you resist the urge to label your life as random or cruel, you begin to notice the delicate precision of it all. Nothing essential is ever taken from you. Only the illusions fall away. Only the false layers strip themselves off. Only the versions of you that were built on fear are exposed. Sometimes the soul redirects you by removing something you believed was necessary. Sometimes it redirects you by closing a door you were never meant to walk through. Sometimes it redirects you by delaying what your impatience wanted to rush. And sometimes the redirection arrives as silence, a pause that forces you to listen more deeply. It may feel like emptiness at first, the kind of emptiness that scares you into believing that something has gone wrong. But silence is not the absence of direction. It is the space where direction becomes clear. In this silence, every symbol of your inner world begins to reveal itself. The forest represents the unknown depth of your unconscious, where forgotten truths wait for your return. The river mirrors the living current of your becoming, always moving, always reshaping the path beneath it. The fire that destroys your plans is also the fire that refines you, burning away everything that cannot follow you into the next chapter. The mirror shows you what you refuse to see. The shadow walks beside you, carrying the parts of you that still need your attention. And the dawn that follows every long night reminds you that the soul never moves you away from life, only toward more of it. You are not being punished by the universe. You are being reorganized by your own truth. And each moment that feels like misfortune carries the seed of a deeper alignment. You may not yet understand where this path is leading. You may not see the larger movement behind your current confusion. But something within you knows. Something within you has always known. And if you listen quietly, you can feel the gentle pull of your soul turning you toward the life that was waiting for you all along. There comes a moment when the air around you feels heavier than usual, as if something unseen were pressing against your chest. You wake up with a strange sensation, a quiet uneasiness you cannot quite name. The world looks the same, yet something feels misaligned. Your routines move forward, but your mind drifts. Your body carries a subtle tension, like a thread pulled just a little too tight. You sense that something is shifting beneath the surface, although nothing external has changed enough to justify this feeling. It arrives softly, like a shadow passing over still water. It is the first sign that your soul is preparing to redirect you. You may try to ignore this discomfort, telling yourself that you are overthinking. You may try to drown it in work, in noise, in distraction. Yet the feeling returns each time the room grows quiet. It settles in your stomach. It lingers in the back of your mind. It whispers when you are doing something ordinary, something familiar. A faint awareness that the life around you no longer fits the way it once did. You feel like a visitor inside your own days. Conversations drain you. Plans lose their flavor. Even the things you used to enjoy feel strangely distant, as if they belong to an older version of you who is slowly fading away. This inner discomfort is not random. It is the psyche withdrawing energy from what no longer supports your growth. Jung believed that the unconscious speaks not only through dreams, but through subtle shifts in your emotional landscape. When something inside you knows it is time to move on, your feelings begin to loosen the roots that tie you to an outdated version of yourself. You do not notice the process at first. It begins like the soft cracking of old wood deep within the frame of a house. Hidden, slow, inevitable. And the moment you try to cling to what is dissolving, the tension intensifies. Sometimes the world mirrors this tension. A relationship grows cold. Opportunities slip away. A plan that once held promise suddenly collapses. You find yourself facing an unexpected obstacle that feels too precise to be a coincidence. It is as if life were delicately removing each piece that keeps you tied to the wrong direction. And while your rational mind may insist that these events are unlucky, something deeper senses the truth. The discomfort you feel is the friction between your attachment and your evolution. You're being asked to release something you have not yet learned how to let go of. Imagine walking through a dense forest at dusk. The path behind you is familiar, worn by your own footsteps. The path ahead is barely visible, swallowed by shadows. You hesitate because the unknown always feels dangerous, even when it calls you toward freedom. Yet the forest around you begins to change. The trees that once felt welcoming now stand silent. The light fades more quickly than usual. The wind carries a different scent. You become aware that lingering on the same path does not bring the comfort it used to. This subtle shift is your first invitation to turn. You may try to force the familiar to feel right again. You may try to restore the old rhythm, repeating the same gestures, repeating the same hopes. But the soul does not return to what it has already outgrown. It keeps nudging you through sensations that seem to appear without explanation. A sudden impatience, a quiet sadness, a sense of being out of place. These emotions are not signs of failure. They are signals, the inner compass turning you away from what drains your vitality. The more you resist, the stronger the signals become. The more you cling, the more the inner pressure grows. And when you finally stop running from the discomfort, something remarkable happens. The heaviness that once felt like an enemy becomes a guide. You begin to see that the ache in your chest is not a sign that something is wrong with your life. It is a sign that something in your life is too small for who you are becoming. The soul does not speak through comfort. It speaks through tension, through longing, through that peculiar emptiness that pushes you to ask deeper questions. It speaks through experiences that refuse to let you stay asleep. You may not yet see where this inner redirection is leading. You may still be standing in the dim light of the forest, unsure of your next step. But something has already begun. The shift is already unfolding. And even if you cannot explain it, you can feel the quiet movement inside you, the gentle turning of your inner compass, guiding you away from what no longer holds truth. The discomfort is not the end. It is the doorway. There comes a point when the discomfort you have been carrying begins to take shape. It no longer feels like a vague heaviness, but like a quiet unraveling. The life you built around your expectations starts to loosen thread by thread. Something you depended on stops working. A path you trusted leads you in circles. Someone you relied on fades into distance. At first you interpret this as a flaw in the world or in yourself. You tell yourself that you should have tried harder, that you should have foreseen the shift, that you should have held on more tightly. But the truth is simpler and far more mysterious. What you are losing is what you were never meant to keep. Your mind resists this idea. It clings to the old structure because it fears the emptiness that follows collapse. You may feel anger. You may feel fear. You may feel the familiar tightening in your chest that tells you something important has slipped from your grasp. Yet beneath those emotions, a different movement begins. The thing you lost starts to reveal its real nature. You see the cracks that had been there all along. You notice the weight you had been carrying without realizing it. You understand slowly that the falling away is not a punishment. It is a release. This is the moment the unconscious steps forward with clarity. Jung saw this as a kind of psychic correction, the deeper self reshaping your external life to reflect your inner truth. The unconscious does not care about your plans. It does not bend to your desires. It responds only to your authenticity. When you drift too far from who you are meant to become, it removes the structures that keep you trapped. It dismantles what you built out of fear. It dissolves what you created out of loneliness. It strips away everything that separates you from the path that is quietly forming beneath your feet. It feels harsh because you are attached. It feels sudden because you were asleep. It feels like loss because you cannot yet see the space that is being cleared for you. But the soul does not operate in chaos. It operates in symbols. And each loss is a symbolic death, a moment where something in you is allowed to fall so that something else can rise. This death is not physical. It is psychological. It is the death of an identity, the death of a story, the death of a version of yourself that served its purpose and must now step aside. Imagine a mirror cracking in slow motion. Each fracture reveals a new angle of your reflection. Each shard catches the light differently. At first it looks like destruction, yet when you look closer, you see that the cracks form a pattern. They guide your gaze to the one place you had avoided looking. The center, the place where your truth has been waiting. Loss works the same way. It breaks the surface so that you cannot ignore what lies beneath. It forces you to see what the comfortable illusion was hiding. Sometimes the soul redirects you through endings. Other times it redirects you through pauses. You may find yourself in a season where nothing moves. Plans stall. Opportunities disappear. People pull away. Days feel hollow. This stillness is not stagnation. It is incubation. The psyche pulls back its energy so that it can redirect it towards something new. You feel empty because something within you has stopped feeding the old direction. The silence is not a void. It is a transition. And if you stay with this silence long enough, something unexpected begins to appear. A clarity so subtle that you barely recognize it at first. A thought that feels lighter than the others. A curiosity that pulls your attention in a direction you had never considered. A faint opening in the forest, illuminated by a thin line of light. This is the soul showing you the next step. Not through force, not through logic, but through resonance. You start to see that what fell away was never your foundation. It was only a scaffolding, useful for a time, and then unnecessary. You begin to understand that the redirection did not break you. It freed you. The moment you stop fighting the loss, you feel the slightest expansion in your chest, a breath you did not realize you had been holding. And in that breath, there is a truth that changes everything. You were not abandoned. You were being guided. There is a moment when the redirection becomes undeniable. Not because something external shifts, but because something inside you finally stops resisting. The ache that once felt like a wound begins to feel like a doorway. The confusion softens. The restlessness quiets. You notice a different kind of movement rising in you, gentle and steady, like the slow unfurling of dawn after a long night. It is not excitement, not yet. It is something deeper, a quiet knowing, a sense that what once felt like misfortune is revealing its hidden shape. You start to look at the pieces of your life with new eyes. The relationship that ended shows you where you had abandoned yourself. The opportunity that slipped away reveals how small you had made your own potential. The path that collapsed exposes how much of your identity was built on fear. You begin to see that these losses did not break your story. They redirected it. They brought your attention back to parts of you that had been starving for honesty. You realized that you were moving in a direction that required you to shrink, and life refused to let you continue. This is the moment when the unconscious stops feeling like an enemy and begins to feel like a companion. The deeper self steps forward not as a force that removes, but as a force that reveals. You sense that something in you has been watching, waiting, guiding, whispering through symbols and coincidences. The dreams you had ignored start to make sense. The patterns you kept repeating show their purpose. The discomfort that chased you suddenly feels like a teacher. You feel as if you are standing inside a vast inner temple, a place woven from intuition, memory, and possibility. You recognize that you have been here before. You simply did not know how to listen. And as you listen now, you notice the subtle openings that life creates when you stop clinging to what is gone. A person enters your life, carrying exactly the kind of conversation you needed. A small opportunity appears, not dramatic, but aligned. A thought rises that feels strangely alive. You may feel the quiet pull toward a different place, a different rhythm, a different version of yourself. These moments do not announce themselves with grand gestures. They appear like soft footsteps in fresh snow. They appear when you are still enough to notice. It is here that the symbols of your inner world come alive. You see the forest around you not as a threat, but as a sanctuary. The trees stand like guardians, showing you that the unknown is not a wilderness designed to swallow you, but a realm designed to grow you. The river no longer feels like a force you must resist. It feels like the current of your own life, carrying you forward even when you cannot see around the bend. The fire that burned away your illusions now warms the space around you, reminding you that destruction and creation share the same flame. The mirror becomes clearer. You no longer see only the fractures. You see the strength in the reflection. The shadow beside you does not frighten you. It feels like an old companion you are finally ready to understand. The dawn rising above the mountains is no longer symbolic. It is visceral. You feel light returning to places inside you that had been dark for years. Something in you breathes again, fully, deeply, without fear of collapsing. And then, almost without realizing it, you understand the truth you had been circling this entire time. What you once called bad luck was a form of protection. Each closed door kept you from abandoning yourself. Each disappointment pushed you toward alignment. Each loss reshaped your path so that you could step into a life that reflects who you truly are. Your soul was never working against you. It was removing what you would not have had the courage to release on your own. This realization does not arrive as a sudden revelation. It arrives as a gentle warmth spreading through your chest, a recognition that feels ancient, as if you had always known it, but needed to live through the darkness to finally believe it. You feel the quiet stirring of gratitude, fragile but sincere. You feel a new kind of trust blooming inside you, the kind that does not depend on predictions or control, the kind that grows from experience, the kind that grows from truth. And as you stand in this new clarity, you sense that the story is not ending. It is deepening. The redirection that once felt like loss now feels like guidance. And the path ahead, illuminated by your own becoming, begins to reveal itself one breath at a time. There is a point when everything you have lived through begins to gather itself into a single breath, a single moment, a single clarity. You feel it rising slowly, as if the pieces of your story were aligning beneath your feet. The discomfort that once felt unbearable now reveals its quiet purpose. The losses you mourned begin to shimmer with meaning. The pauses that frightened you now feel like sacred ground. You sense that something in you has crossed an invisible threshold. You are no longer fighting the movement of your life. You are beginning to flow with it. You look back at the turns that once made no sense, the sudden endings, the unexpected closures, the strange emptiness that arrived without explanation, and you notice that each one nudged you away from a version of your life that would have confined you. It becomes clear that you were being redirected long before you understood it. The soul moves at a depth the mind cannot comprehend. It shifts you through symbols, through timing, through intuition, through the gentle withdrawal of energy from what no longer mirrors your truth. You see now that nothing was random. The forest paths, the cracked mirrors, the dark nights, the rivers that pulled you forward, every image was part of a quiet choreography guiding you toward yourself. As this realization settles, something soft opens inside your chest. A warmth you had not felt in a long time. A steady expansion that feels like a candle being lit in a quiet temple. You feel your breath deepen. You feel your thoughts slow. You feel your inner world become spacious again. The pressure that once lived behind your ribs dissolves into a calm, knowing that you cannot explain, but cannot deny. It is the moment the inner and outer worlds touch, the moment you recognize that your life has been speaking to you in a language you are finally able to hear. In this recognition, the symbols become clearer. The forest is not dark now. It is luminous. The shadows between the trees feel alive with guidance. The air is cool, almost sacred, like a sanctuary built by time itself. The fire that once frightened you now burns gently, revealing the outlines of the path ahead. Its glow shows you where your fear was shaping your steps. Its warmth shows you that endings were never meant to turn you to ash. They were meant to illuminate the places you were too afraid to look. You begin to see the river differently. It does not rush. It does not fight. It moves with purpose. Each bend reveals only what you are ready to see. Each current supports you even when you drift. You understand that life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be navigated. And when you finally stop resisting the current, it carries you with a grace that feels almost unreal. You feel this grace now, rising like a tide inside your heart. Effortless, ancient, true. The mirror also changes. The fractures remain, but they no longer distort your reflection. They reveal it. Each shard shines with a truth you had forgotten. You see the strength you gained through loss. You see the courage you forged through uncertainty. You see the wisdom that quietly rooted itself in you through every moment you survived. The reflection is not perfect. It is real, and that realness feels like a kind of rebirth. The shadow beside you stands quietly. It no longer feels like a threat or an intruder. You recognize it as the part of you that carried your pain, protecting it until you were ready to understand it. You step closer. The shadow does not retreat. It softens, and in this softening, your fear dissolves. You realize that the moments you labeled as bad luck were often the moments when the shadow stepped in to pull you away from the edge of forgetting yourself. It was never trying to sabotage you. It was trying to reveal you. The dawn breaks in your inner landscape. Slowly, gently, the kind of light that does not blind but warms. You feel it spreading across your inner horizon, illuminating memories, decisions, desires, possibilities. This light is not external. It rises from within. It is the light of understanding, the light of alignment, the light of your own soul, finally unobstructed by the illusions you once clung to. You breathe it in, as if it were air you had been deprived of. You feel it filling the spaces that once held doubt, and now you stand at the convergence of everything you have lived. The forest behind you whispers its teachings. The river beside you murmurs its wisdom. The fire before you glows with quiet invitation. The mirror reflects a new truth. The shadow bows in recognition. And above it all, the dawn reveals the path that has been forming under your feet since the very beginning. You feel a sense of belonging to your own life, not as an observer, but as someone who has finally stepped into the center of their story. In this moment of integration, you understand something profound. The redirection was not a detour. It was the way. The ache was not a sign of misfortune. It was the pressure of your soul breaking the shell of an outdated identity. The loss was not a punishment. It was a clearing. The pause was not stagnation. It was preparation. Everything that once felt like life working against you was life working from within you, guiding you back to yourself. And as this truth settles into your chest, a gentle peace washes over you, like standing in the glow of early sunrise after a long night. You realize that you are not moving through life alone. You never were. Something deep, ancient, and intimate has been walking beside you, redirecting you each time you drifted away from your own center. You feel its presence now, warm and steady, like a hand resting softly on your heart. This is the moment when your entire being exhales. The moment the story you lived through becomes the foundation for the story you are now ready to live. The moment the redirection becomes a blessing, and you, for the first time in a long time, feel aligned with the quiet truth that has been guiding you all along. You stand now in a softer place, a place shaped not by certainty, but by understanding. The path behind you feels different when you look at it through this new light. What once appeared broken now resembles a trail carved with intention. Each pause, each ending, each moment that pushed you to your knees. They form a constellation that only becomes visible from this distance. You realize that you were never lost. You were being slowly guided back toward the shape of your own truth. The soul does not speak loudly. It speaks through currents, through timing, through the delicate rearrangement of your life until you finally see what it was trying to show you. As you breathe into this realization, something quiet settles inside you, a stillness that feels honest, a kind of peace that does not depend on explanations. You begin to feel at home in yourself again. The heaviness that once sat in your chest dissolves into space. A gentle expansion fills the hollow places that had been aching for so long. You sense that you have crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. You have tasted the clarity that comes from listening, truly listening, to the movement of your own inner world. And once you recognize this guidance, you cannot go back to calling it luck or misfortune. You know now that it is direction. You walk a little differently with this awareness. Not with urgency, but with presence. You begin to pay attention to the subtle shifts in your emotions. You notice when something that once energized you now leaves you empty. You sense when a path begins to narrow. You recognize the signs long before the collapse. And instead of resisting, you lean in. You let yourself feel the discomfort without drowning in it. You let yourself release what no longer carries life. You let the soul redirect you before the world needs to intervene. This is not control. It is attunement, a deepening relationship with your own becoming. There will still be moments of uncertainty. Life will still bend in ways you cannot predict. But the difference now is that you no longer interpret these bends as punishments. You see them as invitations. You understand that the unknown is not an empty void. It is fertile ground, a space where new possibilities can take root, a space where your truth can breathe without the weight of your old expectations. You begin to trust the rhythm of your own evolution, even when you cannot see the entire path ahead. You know that the inner compass you once doubted has never stopped guiding you. As you continue walking, the symbols remain with you. The forest teaches you to honor the mystery. The river teaches you to flow. The fire teaches you to let go of what cannot follow you. The mirror teaches you to look with compassion. The shadow teaches you to embrace what you once rejected. And the dawn teaches you that light returns in its own time. These symbols are not just images. They are languages your soul uses to speak to you. They rise within you when you need them most, reminding you that your path is not random. It is intimate, and so you move forward with a sense of quiet reverence, not rushing, not grasping, simply listening. You begin to trust the redirections as deeply as you once feared them. You begin to welcome the subtle signs that once unsettled you. You begin to feel the presence of something warm and steady within you, guiding you with a care you had not recognized before. This presence is not separate from you. It is you, the deepest you, the part that never loses its way. As the light softens and settles around your inner landscape, you feel a quiet promise rising within your chest. A promise that whatever comes next will meet you with the same precision that has guided you here. You do not need to rush toward it. You only need to remain aligned with yourself, to listen, to breathe, to trust. And as you take this final breath with me, Let the truth settle like a soft whisper inside your heart. You were never being pushed away from your life. You were always being gently led back to it.